But sometimes I think we talk about City of Sanctuary, and I do a lot of work with universities, and people ask me if I can get my team to do something, and I think I don't really have a team. We don't have a universities team. Universities is about 1/10 of my job, and what our team is all of you. Our team is the network, is City of Sanctuary groups and the movement all around the country. And what we're here to do is to support all of your efforts as much as we can. And we're always really keen to hear how we can do that better, do it differently, and whatever we can do. But just so you know who does work for City of Sanctuary UK right now, I'll quickly show you the faces. So this is Sian, who's our Chief Officer. She's based in Wales. Colleen, National Development Officer, who's based at the back of this room. Myself, so I've got 2 roles at the minute. I'm the Deputy Director and also the Regional Coordinator for the Midlands, the East of England, London and the South East of England. Forward, our Communications Officer, is in Bristol. Nawal, who sorts out any website problems, is in Liverpool. Does an amazing job. Joanna, at the back middle there, is our Finance and Admin Officer. She's in Leeds. Sarah here is based in Ripon in Yorkshire and covers Yorkshire and the Humber. Sam Slapter, back with the beard, he covers northeast. Northeast. Sam also has a wonderful project you might have seen called Stories of Sanctuary. In fact, he performed at Leicester Cathedral quite recently. I don't know if anyone was there. Nicola is our Southwest Coordinator at the back left. Gun is our Scotland Coordinator. He's here. And the only person not in that photo is Jeff, who is our Northwest Coordinator. So that is the team. Everybody apart from myself is part-time. We try to get together 3 or 4 times a year to have meetings and so on, but that's who we are. And I'm your point of contact for the Midlands, basically. So feel free to get in touch with me about anything, anytime, and I'll do my best. And the network itself is growing really rapidly. I'm delighted that I finally found a way for Google Maps to show where all the groups are of City of Sanctuary in the UK. And it's great. I mean, it's amazing. Our mission is not to have as many groups as possible. Our mission is to achieve this vision of the UK being a place of welcome. But we do think that one of the ways to do that is to have local groups in as many places as possible. So at the moment there are about 116, 117 groups around the UK. Some of them are much more active than others. What we tend to find is some groups go through a bit of a curve, a bit of an up-down curve in terms of energy, in terms of volunteers, help, but all of which are doing amazing, amazing things. At the moment, these are the groups in the Midlands. So just really, not everybody's here, but really quite a quick shout out if you're brave enough. Birmingham? Yeah. Hey! Coventry? Yep. Hey! Derby? Yeah. I know Herefordshire aren't here.
I'm from Hereford.
You're from Herefordshire. Welcome, welcome. Anyone from Leicester?
Yes!
Hey. Yeah, you can always tell that if they've got the nice badges. Lichfield, is Warren here? I know 2 people are coming from Lichfield, I guess they're not here yet. No one's here from Lincoln or Malvern. Northampton? Yay! Hey! Nottingham? Yay! Stafford? No. Shropshire? Yay! Yay! No one's here from Walsall. And is anyone from Wolverhampton? No, someone was hoping to come. Okay. So everyone's got badges on, which hopefully says where you've come from. So do pick people out and talk to them throughout the day. That's a big part of what today is about. There is going to be quite a lot of talking this morning, but after that it's going to be a lot more kind of workshopping, networking and chatting and so on. I wanted to ground this in this charter. So City of Sanctuary, the network, agreed a charter a couple of years ago now, and it's on our website. It's about 4 pages long. I actually think it's a brilliant document, but like any document, it's only brilliant if we manifest it, if we make it real. It was produced in a sort of consultative process with a large part of the network, and identified 5 values, which are inclusiveness, openness, participation, inspiration, and integrity. One thing I do outside my day job is I co-convene Norwich City of Sanctuary, so we've got a lot of experience of working. We set up Norwich City of Sanctuary about 4 or 5 years ago, and we're constantly challenging ourselves about what does this actually mean for us in practice as a City of Sanctuary group, and that's something I'd love us to be able to explore today. And then there's principles, and I've paraphrased the principles here, but these are some really important things. So it's a culture of welcome for all. And I think that for all is a real challenge. Who are we focused on? Are we specifically looking at welcome for those people who are currently in the asylum system or maybe appeal rights exhausted? What does it mean for a museum or a theatre or anywhere else to be a welcoming place for all, a university? And that is what it says in our charter. Those are the words in our charter. About relationships, we've got this idea of connections are what can change people's hearts and minds and attitudes. How do we form those relationships, create spaces for those relationships? Working in partnership is absolutely critical. Turning empathy into action, there is a lot of empathy. After 2015 there was this huge groundswell, I think, of empathy. People wanting to do something to help, and they heard about the Syrian crisis. How do we turn that into action, both in terms of activity at the local level, in terms of whether it's drop-ins, whether it's football tournaments, whatever it might be, but also actually making some change to the government's hostile environment policies? How do we work as a network to achieve that? And really critically, how do we ensure that people seeking sanctuary are not recipients of services, but actively involved in decision making in everything we do, are actually driving forward this movement? And that feeds back to the values around integrity, around participation. And that's something that we're always challenged with at a national level. I'm challenged with in Norwich, and it would be great to explore that today. So I just wanted to look at 5 ways that we're trying to achieve that nationally at the moment. I'm going to flick through this a little bit. Coventry's arrived. Hey! We're looking at all groups away. So firstly, Network Voice. Network Voice came up because anyone who was at the 2018 AGM will have seen we changed the structure of City of Sanctuary a bit. So there was this trustee board mushroomed, and there was about 18 people on it at one point for City of Sanctuary UK. That's shrunk right down. Jonathan will be able to tell me how many trustees there are right now. About 8. So we decided to shrink the trustee board, but to set up something called Network Voice. And Network Voice is a group of people, largely people with lived experience of seeking sanctuary. Some are in the asylum system, some have refugee status, who offer advice to the trustees and to the staff of City of Sanctuary. The first meeting was in Bristol in April 2019. It was fantastic, got some really important input. One of the things that's come out of it is an operational advisory group, which is a small group of people, all of whom have sought sanctuary in the UK, who are actively meeting regularly on the phone and in person and giving advice and input to the trustee board to ensure that that is at the heart of their decision making, so is at the heart of what we do. And one thing, and we've got copies outside that we really encourage you to take away with you, that the operational advisory group will be helping us with, not expecting you to be with us, is our theory of change. And I think this is critical. How do we think change is going to happen? Because what we don't want to be is meeting in a room like this in 30 years' time, having the same conversations, and it's the same hostile environment, people are still not feeling welcome, and it's still impossible to access higher education, and so on and so forth. So we have developed a theory of change with input from the groups, with input from the operational advisory group, from Network Voice. There's copies outside, so take one away, and we'd love your input on them. Does that speak to you? Does it cause any questions, any challenges? What do you think about it? This year's AGM conference was in Coventry. We did something similar that we're about to do today, a panel of experts by experience, which was great, again, to challenge us about what that means for people with lived experience to be at the heart of our work and our groups. We launched the book, copy here, copies on the table. Tiffy, as many of you know, wrote this wonderful book, 100,000 Welcomes. Copies are available to buy, and it's essentially the story of City of Sanctuary from its early days through to very recently, inspiring stories across the country of how people are creating a culture of welcome. I mentioned the new chair of the trustee board, and Jonathan, who's here, is the new chair of trustees. And also talked about the formation of a CIO. That's the book. Holly's holding up the book.
What's the leaflet at the back to where you can buy your copy?
So City of Sanctuary UK, probably in about January next year, will officially become a CIO, a charitable incorporated organisation. And we're just finalising what that means. So local groups will become formal members of that CIO, which will obviously include then voting rights at the AGM and so on. But we'll be communicating more about that in the next couple of months. So the heart, I think, of a lot of what we do is our what we call streams. So the streams are the schools, the universities, faith groups, and so on. And I want to just really quickly rattle through some of what's happening in the world of streams work, really just to give a taster, and then if there's anything you want to follow up, find me today, and I'll probably be able to point you to someone who's really involved in that in their area, and you can have a conversation with them to find out more. Schools of Sanctuary is probably our most active stream, and it's been going for a long time. There are now, we think, close to 300 schools of Sanctuary, and I say we think because we're trying to log them all on our website, but we keep hearing about schools that local groups have recognised, but they're not yet on our website. So City of Sanctuary groups can now add groups to the website by yourself. We don't need to do it for you. So if there are any new schools, if you go onto the website, if you don't know how to do it, I can show you how to do it. Make sure you put them on the website, it'll all be included in our database and so on. And it's growing all the time, and I know more and more city sanctuary groups are actively involved in working with schools. And we're developing a new resource pack, which will be ready, we hope, in a couple of months. We've got somebody writing at the moment. They are reaching out for case studies, so if you would like to be a case study, or you know a school that you think should be a case study, let us know. The last pack is a bit out of date now, it needs updating, so that'll be ready soon, and we'll have printed copies and it'll be on the website for you to use. And we've started running workshops and consultations around the country. So there's been one in Yorkshire, one in Liverpool, one in Birmingham, we're doing one soon in London, one in the southwest, and it's just rapidly growing as a stream, a huge amount happening. Universities similarly, so there's now 14 universities of sanctuary. If you go on our website, there's only 11 listed, but that's just 3 have been approved but not yet announced. We had this conference in York, David was there on September the 4th. There was about 45 universities represented there, which is amazing. And what I think is really exciting with the universities is there's a real commitment from senior level, often from Vice Chancellor down, not just to look at improving access to higher education, which is critical, and to become a university sanctuary you must be offering scholarships, you must be showing that you're improving routes to higher education, but also to act as a network to challenge some of the ways in which the hostile environment is impacting on people accessing higher education. And since the conference there's been lots of conversations with universities about that and about their involvement in that, and that's actually a big shift over the last couple of years. One thing that we're doing practically is we've got a pledge that is on our website towards World Access for Higher Education Day, which is November the 26th, which is all part of the work that I'm leading on towards the Global Refugee Forum in December to get universities to publicly commit to improving access to higher education in their institutions. We've had 7 Vice Chancellors sign so far, and you can ask your Vice Chancellors or any university in touch with to sign up to November the 26th, when we're going to do some communications around that. On November the 26th, we're also going to have one of the UK's biggest universities be announced as an university sanctuary, which is exciting. We want to keep it under wraps. Shops of sanctuary. Has anyone got any shops of sanctuary? Oh, the ice cream parlour in Derby, of course. Yeah, fantastic. Are there others, or is it?
No, they're not. Small print.
No, they're not. No.
It is very possible for shops to apply to become a shop of sanctuary. It's great, they're on the high street, it might be on the high street, it can be a very visible space, publicised. We've been doing a pilot with Oxfam shops in Yorkshire, so 3 Oxfam shops have been looking at what does it mean for an Oxfam shop to be a shop of sanctuary. They've been working through the VPRS scheme to offer volunteering opportunities to Syrian families who come from VPRS. They've trained all of their staff and volunteers, they've put stuff in the shop windows, they've got materials in the shop, all about sanctuary. And we're now working with the trading division at Oxfam. They're producing materials for every single Oxfam shop in the country to encourage them to become shops of sanctuary. So they know, and part of the materials is that they need to contact their local city sanctuary group as part of the process to be in touch. But then potentially we've got 650 Oxfam shops, which could be a shop window for a lot of what we're doing. And I think the question is, where do we take that? So there's obviously some obvious places like Amnesty bookshops and so on. In Norwich we've got 2 cafes that are cafes of sanctuary. I think exploring how we find windows on the high street literally could be really beneficial. Gardens of Sanctuary is another bit that I lead. There's resource packs for a lot of these out there. So this is a project I run with Social Farms and Gardens and the Permaculture Association. And we're just getting it going, but Social Farms and Garden are putting in a bid for some funding which would enable us to run training all over the country. Garden refers to any farm, small holding, allotment, any growing space, and there are loads and loads that are contacting us saying the main thing we get is we really want to welcome people who are asylum seekers who come from Syria through VPRS, and people come once but they don't come back. We keep hearing this again and again and again. What are the barriers? So our resource pack explores some of those barriers. We've also got a report which is kind of a slightly academic report that I wrote basically to help gardens with funding bids if they want to do this sort of work, or the evidence base is in there. And I was invited to Belfast to run a training session which was really interesting in the context of conflict in Belfast, wanting to welcome Syrians into already fragile sites at times. Really fascinating. And now I need to talk to David and Barbara knows about this. I've just been asked to potentially run one in Birmingham in December. So again, if there's any community gardens, farms you're working with, something to explore. There's a new resource pack being developed for Sanctuary in the Arts. There are more and more theatres, and Martin's here from the Nottingham Playhouse today. Theatre companies, museums, and others, and also festivals. AMY talking to us. The Steadfod in Wales, really keen to look at what is a festival of Sanctuary. So again, loads of potential. The resource pack will be ready hopefully. And Colleen, what's our release date for the Arts Resource Pack?
It's on the website right now.
It's on the website now.
There's printed copies down at the platform of Festival in Kent, which starts next week.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to find some funding to print some more for the rest of the network.
But it is online, so
It's
again,
online,
feel free to
it's on
share
the
it with
website.
any arts-based organisations that you're working with. We did have libraries within the arts. We've taken it out of the arts and given it its own stream. The reason for that is it's quite specific, the work libraries are doing, but also West Midlands libraries and Greater Manchester libraries have got some funding to develop the Libraries of Sanctuary project themselves. We've managed to pull all of that funding together so that we can develop one resource bank, which is being written at the moment, for libraries. But what might well happen is Libraries Connected, which is the national network that supports libraries around the country, is interested in encouraging every library in the country to become a Library of Sanctuary. So again, that will involve them working with their local city sanctuary group, but potentially, the way I see it, great if they can offer space, if they can offer opportunities, but also capacity for city sanctuary group. I don't know, I'm looking at you, Amanda, but I know capacity for all of us is an issue. But whenever I'm talking, the big library in Norwich wants to join, and I've said to them, great, but put one of your staff on our steering group and give us some capacity for our work in this area. And they say, sure, no problem. And by the way, can we have a room for free once a month? Briefly, the faith stream. So we haven't had much capacity nationally on working with different faith groups, but Sian, Chief Officer, is now giving some time to this. So she and I have been meeting with senior representatives from some of the major faith groups and the interfaith groups to look at what is a place of sanctuary, what is a place of worship, what is a place of sanctuary, how I've been talking, for example, for the London districts of Methodist churches who would like to become a district of sanctuary across London. But they're really aware, their message to me is we've probably got 2 or 3 years work here before we really feel comfortable that our churches are places of sanctuary, and that's great, let's do that work together. So we're just starting to explore that and what that means, and we're updating the website at the moment. So again, any work you're doing with different faith groups, let us know, and we'd love to feed it into this process. So this, oh, it's gone off page, I'm really, really excited about and slightly nervous about. Local authorities. There's this question which you'd think we'd have an answer to. What is a city of sanctuary? But I'm not sure we do have an answer to that. And I think we need one. And this is very much personal opinion. People might agree or disagree with. I think there's an issue. In America, as many of you all know, there are things called sanctuary cities. There are cities called sanctuary cities. And sanctuary cities is a legal definition of a city which refuses to report undocumented migrants to federal authorities, which has different laws in place when it relates to essentially people seeking sanctuary, which is normally undocumented migrants. Local authorities in the UK don't have those powers. So if you are an asylum seeker and you are dispersed to Leicester local authorities, there's certain things the City Council can do, but there's an awful lot they can't do, because your life is still largely at the whim of the Home Office decision-making process. So I think there's an issue in here about us deciding that a place is a city of sanctuary. Having said which, there are local authorities which are going above and beyond in their commitment to ensuring that people are welcome. So we're currently talking to Birmingham City Council, who have put together a partnership board, who and are potentially investing some money, but certainly a lot of time into manifesting in a sense of integrity their commitment to being a city of sanctuary. Similarly, in Lewisham, they're hiring a staff member to work on this in Lewisham Borough Council. They have and it's in their corporate strategy that we want to be a borough sanctuary. They've been working with the Lewisham Refugee and Migrant Network to do this listening exercise across the borough. So what does it mean for Lewisham to be a borough sanctuary? How do we make that happen? So we're talking to several local authorities at the minute to look at what point do we say Birmingham, Coventry, anywhere is a city of sanctuary. does that point happen? What then is the relationship between what the local authority is doing and the community grassroots group are doing? And they're all actually really exciting questions and could actually transform the way that we work, because although we're coming up against a brick wall a lot of the time when we're talking to government, we're not the local authorities. We are in some areas, but a lot of local authorities are really, really committed and can make a significant difference. So that's an active piece of work that we'd love your contribution and thoughts on. And then Emma Burks from Asylum Matters will join us later and we'll talk more about this. But campaigning priorities are important as well. So we work really closely with Asylum Matters, who many people know, with sort of sister partner organisations. But again, this ongoing question of what can we do to put pressure on local authority and national government. At the moment, that's been really hard. Many of you will have seen we've had to cancel Sanctuary in Parliament this year because there probably won't be a Parliament this year. We had to make a decision a week or two ago whether or not potentially to invest a lot of money in an event where there would be no MPs, so we chose not to. Last year we had over 45 MPs who engaged, including ministers. So Sanctuary in Parliament continues to be a really important part of what we do, but I hope you agree this year probably didn't make sense to go ahead with it. But we do want to keep working together on campaigning priorities.
Just to interject there, what we can be doing, what local groups could be doing, is their mini sanctuary in Parliament, actually setting up public meetings and inviting all their local MPs to that, and setting up experts by experience to share their stories with their MPs. That's something, in the pipeline we'd like to develop a toolkit to support groups to have their own sanctuary in Parliament, because actually there's only room for 100 of us to get out to Parliament to lobby, but we could get 50, 100 people in every city and town. So that's the future plan.
Yeah. And some of the campaigns that Asylum Matters and others, and we're working on in the big network, are a really well-run campaign. Lift the Ban, who many of you have been involved with, I think it's a brilliantly organised campaign and has a lot of potential for being a successful campaign if only Parliament had time to talk about anything else except Leavers.
Ben, we're planning to target prospective parliamentary candidates when there's an election announced, which is pretty imminent.
We don't have a plan. As Colleen said, it's something we're hoping to develop a toolkit. I think it would be a really good thing to do. I had a conversation with Refugee Council yesterday about targeting all of they're targeting all of the London mayoral candidates in the lead up to the mayoral elections, and there's potential for doing that in other places with elected mayors. But certainly I think we should be doing that, and Asylum Matters are producing resources for it. This afternoon we're going to have a World Cafe looking at 3 different issues, and Emma's going to run one of those on campaigning, which she'll be able to do.
Hi Ben, as you know, I used to do a lot of work with Greenpeace. One of the things I did and still do is I lobby my MP on climate matters, but I was also a trainer for lobbyists.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to talk to you about maybe offering a training session
Okay.
for a couple of people from each group to maybe learn more about lobbying MPs on a one-to-one basis.
Thank you. I think that would be great, and I think one of the things that's really critical, I feel, and I'm really pleased that Surviving group are here today, is that lobbying is done by people who are seeking sanctuary, that their voices are heard, and that one of the things that some city sanctuary groups can do is ensure there's an opportunity for their voices to be heard. I'm conscious of time, so 2 more slides. We've run these brilliant courses, Sanctuary in Politics. There's been 3 of them now, plus some in Ireland. The feedback has been phenomenal. They are for people who are currently seeking sanctuary or have been seeking sanctuary. There was last week in Durham, there was 19 people on the course hosted by Durham University. Incredible feedback, and the idea is about training the leaders, the next generation of people with lived experience who can lead on some of these campaigning priorities and other work we're doing. And we're hoping to run more next year. I don't know if I think we're aware, Northampton University have offered to host one, which is very kind of them. But if you think this is something that would be interesting, we do it on a sort of regional level, so it could be an East Midlands one or a West Midlands one probably, or a Midlands-wide one. That's something we could explore funding dependent, but hopefully about funding for next year. They are really, really great courses. They've been really successful. And just a few final things I wanted to mention, and I'll share this PowerPoint, so sorry for all the information. We now have a database, which is just fabulous. But one of the things it means is that award applications can now be made online. They don't have to be, but they can be, and hopefully it'll help streamline the process. So the link is not yet on our website because we're just testing it, but we'll put it up there soon, and I can share it with anyone who's got anyone applying who might want to try it out. But it's basically the same as the normal form you've been using, it's just online. Anyone can go on, they can apply, they will put on there, just to use Cherry as an example, who's from school in Nottingham, they will go in, they'll say, what region are you in the Midlands, what city are you in Nottingham. When they put in the application, it will come to me as the regional coordinator, and also to Jane as the Nottingham coordinator. We'll see that application. So that system is up and running, but we're kind of still testing it. But if you want to use it already, you're more than welcome, or it will be fully online very soon. David looks sceptical. Second thing, just to mention, solidarity with the climate movement. There was a migrant block, some of you might have seen the London climate strike recently. There's a lot of conversations happening, particularly with the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants, IMIX, and trying to think, various other organisations, Amnesty, about the overlap between the causes of the climate crisis and the migration crisis, if you want to call it that. Also some of the challenges that the climate crisis are often using unconsciously negative language about migration and educating in that sense, and also how we act in solidarity. So I'm having some conversations with groups about that, if anyone wants to follow up. We're developing a course with the Forgiveness Project, looking at how we have difficult conversations, how we feel more comfortable going into spaces where maybe not everyone agrees with us, and how we can have conversations that enable us to learn from each other and hopefully bring more, let's say, unusual suspects into the movement. So we're hoping to develop that next year. And we're also quite involved with the Global Refugee Forum in December in Geneva, particularly around education, access to education for refugees, and the work of local authorities and cities. So I just mentioned those. If they're of interest to anyone, do grab me in. I'm happy to follow up. There you go. That's everything I'm going to say. And where we're over time. So I'm now we're going to move on to our next session. I just was going to invite Malcolm.